So, good morning, everyone. We're here with Ruby Powers, and we're going to talk about the victims of criminal activity applying for EU visa. Thank you so much, Ruby, for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
So, we're also here with Powers Law Group. The law firm is 13 years old already. So, we're really grateful for you to be here and explain us about everything.
So the U visa came out, I believe, around 2008. It was around the same time that I started the firm, but the regulations took a little while to come out further. And when it was first announced, it later took some time to get more of the details and the sort of the provisions that we frequently ask questions. But it's a really great program. It's unfortunately it's for those who are victims of unfortunate crimes, but the point of it is so that people are not afraid to speak to law enforcement, to be helpful, provide information to try to prevent further crimes, and to build more of a synergy and a relationship between the victims and law enforcement, regardless of one's status. So the U visa is a visa that's provided to those who meet certain requirements who are victims of qualifying criminal activity. We'll go into what that actually means, and then what the process is to apply, and then some more details about family members, and also just a little bit understanding about how many visas are available. So the U visa set aside 10,000 visas every fiscal year, which starts October 1st, for victims of certain crimes who've suffered mental or physical abuse and are helpful to law enforcement or government officials in the investigation or prosecution of a criminal activity. So there's a few prongs. One of them is that you're a victim of the qualifying criminal activity. We'll show a list of some of those crimes. Two is that you suffered substantial physical or mental abuse as a result of having been a victim of criminal activity. And you would usually show that with a psychological report or some medical records. Three, you have information about that criminal activity. And if you're under age 16, unable to provide for various reasons, a parent or guardian or a next friend would be able to help out on your behalf. And then fourth, you're helpful or are helpful or likely to be helpful, that you're basically on call to be of assistance. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have done something, but you are available and would be available to be helpful. And then finally, the crime occurred in the United States or violated US laws. So what is one of these crimes? Well, here's a list. So ones that we generally see would be domestic violence. We've seen false imprisonment, and there's also it's just we've seen other things as well, and this is a very difficult subject, so I won't list all of the ones, but basically the other one we'd see would be the assault, and that one can lead to like a felonious assault. Is generally something that we would see, or the other thing to note is that other related crimes that are similar to these level would also could be qualify. So if maybe it's not felonious assault is one I was mentioning. If it's not exactly one of these specifically, but it's similar, it could still qualify. So what you do is you, if you're a victim of a crime, you get the police report, and you would try to get the record. We could help you research that as well, of the crime that occurred. And then with that information, there's basically a two-part process. One, you need to get the certification. So with the crime and the information, you would you submit the I-918 Supplement B, and you to a qualifying signatory, if you will, who can certify, who's authorized official to certify the signature, and they have to sign this. And then once it's been signed, But once it's been reviewed and signed, it's good for 6 months. Then it expires if you don't file within 6 months. So step one, if you are a victim of a qualifying crime, get the certification signed, and even that whole process can be complicated. Certain cities, like in Harris County, we're supposed to email it to a certain email, and then it's supposed to be reviewed, and then if they decide to sign, then they'll send it back. Now, some cities or states are not as familiar with the U visa. And so it can really depend on where you are applying. Some of them make up these arbitrary rules that you have to file it within so many years of the crime. We've gotten approval of a crime that was over 18 years old at one point. So there's actually not a rule that says how old the crime is, and that if it's this old, then it's ineligible. It's actually, that doesn't exist. Every certifying agency sort of makes up their own rules. And we've also seen around the country, not every location is very familiar with this. Sometimes we've had to educate the local law enforcement about the U visa. So once you get it certified, then you file the rest of the application. And with that, you usually include a personal statement and other evidence to establish every single prong, like we mentioned in the prior slide. All of these prongs, you want to make sure that you show that you meet those requirements. Now, U visa is very generous. You can include a lot of family members, and even if they weren't a family member at the time of the crime or the time you filed, you can add the family member later. So qualifying are eligible for a derivative U visa based on the relationship to you, the principal filing the U visa. The principal must have their petition for a U visa approved before their family members can be eligible for their own derivative U visa. But while the U visa is pending, you can add that family member to the application. And to qualified family member, you must file the form I-918 supplement A at the same time of the application or a later time, like I said. So if you're under 21, you can petition on your spouse, children, parents, and unmarried siblings under 18. But if you are over 21, you can petition for your spouse and children. The one other thing we didn't mention right here on the U visa is that there are lots of waivers for the U visa. There are so many waivers. There's waivers for so many inadmissibilities, from prior deportation orders, from unlawful presence, from a false claim to citizenship. So there are a lot of waivers for the U visa. So it's unfortunate to be a victim of a crime. It is great that this program exists to create this communication synergy between law enforcement and victims, so that they don't feel afraid to communicate, that they are going to somehow be penalized for being without status. But the other benefit about the U visa is that it has so many waivers for so many inadmissibilities. And then once you get the U visa, it is granted for 4 years, and after you can have extensions are available in certain limited circumstances. And then after you've had the U visa for a certain amount of years, you can apply for your legal permanent residency. And each family member would have to apply for their own legal permanent residency. The other thing to note is that the U visa only has 10,000 visas every year. And so that's the reason why there's such a long wait. So when people are saying, how long does it take? Well, people who filed a few years ago are going to see different processing time than the people who file right now. There's expectations that it's almost an 8 or 9 year wait to get a visa available right now, just because of there's only 10,000 visas available every fiscal year. And that is something that they've mentioned with Congress that they could give more visas available, then that would allow there'd be less of a wait. So that's something that we always want, but it hasn't happened yet. The other thing to note is that they did come out with this about a year or so ago, that while you're waiting for the U visa, petitioners are placed on a waiting list will be granted deferred action or parole and are eligible for work authorization while waiting. So that is another added benefit to being able to get work authorization while you're waiting. And that only came out around the summer of 2021. So and the other thing to note is that for family members, there's the U1 is the non-immigrant, the U2 is the spouse, the U3 is the child, U4 is the parent, and U5 is the sibling. So they really actually have a lot of different visas with the U. And another thing to note is that when you apply for legal permanent residency, you need to have at least 3 years of continuous period of residence in the U status before you're eligible to apply for adjustment. And so it is quite a lengthy process, but it is beneficial and in the end. And it is, for some people, it's the only thing that they're eligible for. So if this might apply to you, a friend, a family member, please feel free to pass it on. We're also doing this video in Spanish. And so it is an option for a lot of individuals. And a lot of times I notice people don't even realize that this visa exists. And, you know, even if it's been a long time, it still might be worth asking to get the certification. There's just a lot of benefits for family as well as you have lots of waivers for it. So Ileana, how can people stay in touch with us going forward?
So we already have all the social media platforms, so you can reach out to us. Even if you want to make a call, you have up there the number and you can reach out and then get a social like assistance for your case in special. And you can find updates every single day in our social media platforms where we make updates about immigration and nationality. So we already have done many of the October webinars. We already did the F1 visa, O1 visa. Today we're making victims of criminal activity applying for U visa. We have the I-600 and A unlawful presence waiver, and that's for this month.
Well, thank you so much for watching. See
Thank
you
you
next
so
time.
much.